everyone, it's Jack from Cultaholic.com, and this week we're in Des Moines, Iowa. That's right, don't you love Iowa? I love Iowa. Here's 3 things that I've learned are stereotypes about Iowa. Lots of corn. Seth Rollins is from there. That one Slipknot album was named Iowa. One of those things was a stereotype, the other 2 were facts. Pretty widely known facts. But anyway, all the shenanigans are over, the shake-up is over, and now it's time to take a look at the ramifications of said shake-up. But how good was Raw? And there's only one way of finding out, really. That's by assigning each individual segment a lovely grade of its very own. That's right, it's time for Monday Night Raw Graded. So we start things off not with Seth Rollins, not with Stephanie McMahon, not even with Shane McMahon, but with Triple H. Sadly not in a Mad Max car or anything, but it was still a tremendously exciting time for your boy, me. Because I love a bit of Triple H, I do. Just love it. And honestly, I didn't really know what Triple H was here to say. I thought he was going to grab the mic and go just like, the Viking experience, Vince. Really, what are you doing to my boys? But we'll never find out what he wanted to say, because before he could even say a word, he was interrupted by Seth freaking Rollins, the Universal Champion, and Iowa's own as well. And in case you didn't know that, he had it on his shirt in big letters too. And obviously, being in his hometown and being the Universal Champion and being Seth Rollins, all those factors combined meant he got a pretty monster pop. Also during his entrance, we found out on commentary that tonight there are going to be 2 triple threat matches, which are AJ Styles versus Samoa Joe versus Rey Mysterio, and The Miz versus Drew McIntyre versus Baron Corbin. And the winner of those 2 respective matches will meet in the main event to become the #1 contender at Money in the Bank. That's a pretty nice concept, I like that. Seth makes it to the ring, he and Triple H shake hands, and pretty much Triple H just kind of congratulates him on how far he's come. He was like, you know what? You once left WrestleMania the Kingslayer, reference to when Rollins beat himself, and went, but now you're a bona fide beast slayer. You stomped Brock Lesnar's bucket head into the canvas. Then Rollins goes, I stomped his bucket head 3 times. They say bucket head quite a lot. Say that quite a lot of times. Then Rollins goes, but hang on, I'm sure Paul Heyman's been blowing up your phone, asking for a rematch so he can get the title back. And Triple H was like, no, I think he's just still in Vegas licking his wounds. And Rollins is like, oh, well, who's going to be my challenger then? And then Triple H, we're going to have 2 triple threat matches, AJ Styles versus Rick. And I was like, hang on, we've just found out about this on commentary. If you were going to tell us that in the promo itself, why mention it on commentary in the first place? WWE. Oh, I'm tired today. And immediately with that, Rollins is then cut off in succession by every single man that's gunning for his title later on tonight. So we already knew who they were thanks to that little commentary package beforehand, and now they're all coming out, patiently waiting, obviously behind the curtain, one after the other, hitting their theme tune, going out there, saying a few words into the mic, and basically going, I'm this character, he has one line to get that across. And I was enjoying the segment as well. And then it just became really formulaic and awkward, and I didn't like it very much at all in the end. Yeah, it sounds a little bit harsh, especially given the fact that I thought it actually started off pretty strongly, but I'm going to give this segment a D+. Not only was it awkward and unnatural and formulaic, and we've seen it so many times before, it also felt really long and really dragged because we had 6 guys to come out and give a brief character synopsis of themselves, and I was just like, oh man, I can't be dealing with this. Like, can we just hurry this up a little bit? Because we already knew what was going to happen because they announced it on commentary literally like a minute before Triple H said so. Oh, very frustrating times. Next up though, we had the first of those triple threat matches, AJ Styles versus Rey Mysterio versus Samoa Joe. Oh, it just sounds good on paper, doesn't it? And it was good in reality as well. That's just a good one-on-one matchup any way you look at it. Like whoever the odd man out is, the other 2 is pretty cool to see, whether it's AJ Styles and Rey Mysterio in like a historic battle of the junior heavyweight cruiserweight style flying guys, or whether it's like Rey versus Joe, the continuation of the SmackDown feud, or whether it's Styles versus Joe, who've been enemies like way back in TNA since forever now. But they included some really cool and unique 3-man spots as well, which you like to see in any sort of triple threat match. So there was a double superplex from the top, and there was also the finish, which was basically just AJ Styles going like mini beast mode, slamming Rey Mysterio down, slamming Joe down, and then grabbing Rey Mysterio and hitting a Styles Clash onto Samoa Joe, if that makes sense. And then that was enough to get him the pinfall, and I think, you know, he was probably the right choice to win. I'm going to give this match a B+. It was a really fun and pretty unique opening match of the show. And the right person won as well. Bit of an unnatural start because the end of the last segment was just all 6 guys and Seth Rollins stood in the ring going like, oh, we're gonna fight at one point, but not right now. Then we had a break, and then this match started off, and it was like, is that what wrestlers would really do? Would they patiently wait? But you know, it was fine, and then the match itself did deliver. Next up, we had Naomi hit the ring, and then we had the Iconics cut her off because the upcoming match is Naomi versus Billie Kay. But the Iconics got a promo beforehand. Now, before I get really annoyed at this, let me just say that I think the Iconics are two of the most naturally funny superstars on the entire roster today. Obviously, you can tell that by watching any of their stuff backstage. They just have a knack for humour, especially Billie Kay, who is just hilarious. But with that in mind, this was really, really bad material they were given to work with. I'm going to assume that this was the fault of the writing, not the superstar. You can never quite 100% tell how much input the superstars had, but the fact that Billie Kay is so funny and then told the joke so unfunny says to me that they were kind of forced to say this. I don't know, but at the end of the promo as well, I'm sure Corey Graves on commentary just goes, who wrote that? And I was thinking the same thing. So they talk about how there's a pop star out there who really likes them and got them backstage tickets to her show and stuff, and then they can't remember her name and they think it's like Venti or whatever. It's Ariana Grande. They were mixing up like coffee sizes in Starbucks. That's the sort of humour you want to see on Monday Night Raw, one of the most longest running cable television show. And then anyway, then they mock Naomi because, you know, Bayley was her tag partner for like 1 week and now she's gone over to SmackDown, so Naomi's alone. She doesn't have anyone to have her back, if that makes sense. But then Naomi wins in like a minute with a sunset flip. So that's one half of your women's tag team champions, everyone. Yeah, I've got to give this a D-. I'm really sorry. You know, nothing that the two women did in the ring was particularly bad. It was just that they were given very little time and the promo beforehand was excruciating. But at the same time, the more annoying thing to me and the bigger factor in this getting a low grade is the fact that, you know, there's been all this highly publicized drama backstage about Sasha and Bayley reportedly being furious that they lost the women's tag team titles at WrestleMania to the Iconics, and everyone kind of going, no, the Iconics will be fine. And now, you know, one of them's losing in a minute to Naomi. I get that Naomi's got to look strong because she's just come over in the shake-up, but at the same time, they're the women's champions. I'm quite angry, but I can't articulate that very well, which is awkward because this is my job. I'm annoyed, and Billie Kay should have won with craftiness and with the help of Peyton. Or they should never have won the belts from Sasha and Bayley, who should be defending it this week on NXT against the bloody Sky Pirates. But Kyrie's been called up anyway, and everything's changed. I don't like change is the moral of this story. Next up, the second of those two triple threat matches to determine the main event for the number one contender to Rollins' belt. So this was The Miz versus Baron Corbin versus Drew McIntyre. And it was, you know what, it wasn't as good as the first triple threat match, but it was still pretty good, to be honest. I thought this was going to be just like a quarter of an hour of the two heels ganging up on The Miz. But no, Corbin and McIntyre fell apart pretty early on, which was nice to see. And I just generally enjoyed it. Babyface Miz is still kind of friggity fresh, yo. Babyface Miz knows what he's doing. Jumping off the top rope, getting the crowd behind him. I'm all for it. The ending also made total sense, even if the winner probably wasn't who I would have picked at the end of the day. Well, I don't know, because given what happens later on, you can kind of understand it. Basically, Drew McIntyre hits the Claymore kick on The Miz, but then Baron Corbin rolls in, shoves Drew out of the ring, and picks up the sneaky, unearned pinfall. Very Baron Corbin of him, very on brand. I'm going to give this match a B. As I say, I did enjoy it, but not quite as much as the other triple threat match from earlier on in the night. Next up, here comes Sami Zayn, who's just properly, his big like, yeah, look at me entrances are approaching like Chris Jericho levels of parody. Remember when Jericho came back and would just milk the applause for 5 minutes, not say a word, and then just walk to the back? This is the sort of territory that Sami Zayn's rapidly approaching here. He then says that the 10 months he spent away from WWE were the best of his life, and then literally starts showing us a slideshow of his vacation photographs from around the world. He's like, here's me in front of a Scottish castle, here's me at the fjords in Norway. It's just like, it's such a legit way of getting heel heat, because who hasn't been around a relative's house and they're like, this is us on the beach, oh, this is our balcony from the hotel. You're just like, oh man, like, can we just move on? That's exactly what Sami Zayn was doing. And it did work as well. He's good enough to pull it off. He also shows us a picture of him in a hammock, for example, and describes himself, I think this is word for word, all cute and wrapped up like a cute little sausage roll, which is the best heel line I've ever heard. But then he gets more to the point of his promo and says, since I came back, I've been feeling really anxious and depressed, and the fact is, it's because of you guys, the fans. And then he tells us all to go to hell, and then he leaves. I'm going to give this segment a B+, and I know some of you might be thinking, oh, that's a little bit harsh. It was actually a really good promo, and it was, but let me explain why. I'm starting to get a little bit worried. So Sami, right, is just working wonders with this material. Some of the material is great as well, but whether it's good or a bit questionable, he's knocking it out of the park week on week, and has been doing since whenever he came back. It was like the Raw after WrestleMania. He's been doing really well for the past 3 weeks. But the issue is that I'm starting to get a few Dean Ambrose flashbacks. Whenever Sami says something, like in this one, I think he dropped in the line, "You people make me sick," or like sometimes he'll just kind of go at the hometown, or the fans of the hometown, I guess, a little bit too pointedly, and it's just reminded me of when Ambrose was in his gas mask phase, and it was just as if the writing team had no real direction. This is what I'm worried is going to happen for Sami Zayn, and I just feel like this character needs more of a point and more of a thrust behind it, and I just want to know what he wants, basically. I think we need that by next week, really. But at the moment, great work from Sami still, and a good segment. Next up, Cesaro versus Cedric Alexander. Are you joking? Like, what? What a matchup on paper. This is like, it seems like this would be like the headline of an Evolve card, like 3 years in the future from now. But no, it's legit. Cesaro versus Cedric Alexander, and it doesn't quite live up to the hype in reality, to be honest. It was still really good because both guys are tremendous professional wrestlers, but the problem is, well, there's two problems really. They don't really get very long, and they don't seem to be going totally all out. I feel like if this match was on a pay-per-view, we'd be seeing some outrageous stuff from both guys, but they sort of reined it in a little bit, and maybe they were told to so as not to overshadow other things on Monday Night Raw. I don't know, but the finish was cool. Anyway, the finish was cool, with Cedric springboarding himself right into a big uppercut from Cesaro, and Cesaro picks up a rare singles victory. I'm going to give this match a B-, I think. Not just on the action alone. I think that the match was probably good enough to deserve like a B or something like that, but I'm going to subtract a little few points just because I feel as though maybe it shouldn't have existed in the first place, if you understand what I mean. So a couple of weeks ago I said that I didn't want to see Samoa Joe versus Braun Strowman in a feud because I didn't want to see either of those guys lose or look weak right now. I like Joe, I like Strowman, and I think they both are at points in their careers right now where they need a bit of a push. I feel the same about Cedric and Cesaro. They're two of my favourite in-ring guys on the entire roster, so I really want to see them do well and not lose a match. And the fact that this match happened and, you know, Cedric lost is a little bit sad for me. But on the plus side, that Joe Strowman feud doesn't look like it's going ahead. So maybe Cedric will get his win back. Oh, I don't know if I want to see that either. Maybe they should just leave it for now, and we'll see what Cesaro does in the future. But yeah, B- for this segment overall. Does sound a bit harsh, but I'm sticking with it. Next up, the Lucha House Party versus the Viking Experience. No, wait, sorry. The Viking Raiders. The Viking Raiders. That name didn't last very long, did it? Right. Every single old wrestler who came out on Twitter and laid into us, the fans, and called us entitled and impatient and the internet generation and marks. You really do owe us an apology, actually. We mocked that name, which we told you was ridiculous, as the fans, as the fan base, and now WWE have, fair play to them, changed it, because it was really ridiculous. And all of you who were like, just give it a few weeks and it'll be over and everyone will forget. Shut up, mate. Who's right now? Suck it. Too sweet. The fans have the power. Oh, no, we don't. No, we don't at all. Anyway, the Viking Raiders, which is a better name now, they attack the Lucha House Party before the bell and beat them up, and there's no match. So that's your segment. There's a little backstage promo as well where Hawkins and Ryder, the Raw Tag Team Champions, are like, that's a bit worrisome, but we are the champs and we have to be confident. I'm going to give this just straight down the middle a C grade. It does make the lads look strong, which is important, but also it would have been nice to see them wrestle. But the main thing that I have an issue with here is the sort of issues that were hidden by the name change last week. So yes, the Viking Experience was a ridiculous name, and I'm glad it's gone, and I do appreciate WWE just immediately retconning that and stamping it out. But the problem is, I think there are other things that lie behind the name that we may have missed because we were, understandably, we were so quick to ridicule it. So there's still a really infuriating disconnect between NXT and the main roster. For example, the Viking Raiders came up without the tag titles for some reason, and also are now heels despite blatantly just being baby faces on the NXT roster. I just want to see these sort of gaps being bridged in a more satisfying way that rewards us for watching more of your product. WWE, do you see what I mean? Like, we're watching NXT, reward us for that. Give us little bits of ooh, look, this is a reference from the thing you watch on the main roster in front of all the people who don't get it, but you get it because you're special. Give us more of that, please. Next up, we get Becky Lynch versus Alicia. Oh, this match. Versus Alicia Fox. But before that, we get a little promo battle between Becky Lynch and Lacey Evans where Becky says, oh, you know, I've made a career out of slapping around bleach blonde women like you who've gained the favour of management. Lacey tries to set the two up as polar opposites, saying you're like all hot-blooded and you've got an Irish temper. I'm a woman, I'm always in control of my emotions and that sort of... Didn't mind it, to be honest, didn't mind it. But then we got the match. Oh no, oh no. So I hate overly criticising wrestlers for bad matches. I always feel a little twinge of guilt because I've done little bits in the ring and it's not easy at all. And I've only had tiny little minuscule things to remember. And sometimes I've messed up and it's such a hard job, but I do have to criticise when there's been a bad performance. Alicia Fox in this match, I don't know whether it was ring rust from her time away or whether it was just an awful night for her, but she really didn't do herself justice here. She was getting tangled in the ropes. She was just forgetting how to like move, and occasionally she'd even get rolled into the ring and just get stuck, or like, it was really, really awkward to watch a lot of times. Kept grabbing Becky in like grapples and headlocks and stuff because they were clearly trying to call spots to each other as if maybe she'd like forgotten what was next. It was sloppy throughout. Becky tried her best to salvage it, but almost got dropped on her head during a head scissors spot. And on commentary, Graves, just totally breaking kayfabe, just goes like, oh God, even though it's meant to be Becky in control of the move, man. It was, at least Becky won, you know, and she did clean. And then Lacey Evans jumped her after the bell and like hit her with the women's right. And it carried on that feud nicely, but the match itself was really appalling, and it's sad to say. Because this wasn't just the match itself and there was more of a segment around it with the promos before and the attack on Becky afterwards, I'm going to give this an E, but that's literally the only thing that saves this from being an F, because it was really awkward and really uncomfortable to watch, actually. Yeah, I don't know what happened. Wouldn't be on my recommended list come the end of the year, let's say. Next up, we've got Ricochet versus, not Bobby Roode, Robert Roode. Ooh, so this is basically Bobby Roode with a mustache and more of an overtly heel gimmick, I guess. But it feels like we missed an episode somewhere down the line. All we get is, on his way to the ring, a sort of WWE.com exclusive interview that Cole shows us and goes, here, look at this will explain it. And it doesn't explain it. It's just Robert Roode going, now I've lost that dead weight Chad Gable because he's gone to SmackDown. I'm going to really show you what I can do. And it's like, all right, we get it. You're a heel now. You've grown the facial hair. You're acting like a dick. But why? We've missed something somewhere. Yes, he jumped someone and they showed that video as well after him and Gable lost a match, but that wasn't like, to me, an overtly heelish heel turn. That was just frustration because they'd lost the match and it would have led to a heel turn. But we've time skipped ahead and now he's just fully heel. He's got the mustache. He's now at like a level 40 heel, having previously been sort of level like 5. I don't know what's gone on. Honestly, I feel like we've missed something. That wasn't my only frustration with this. My other thing was also that he won. He beat Ricochet in singles action, which I think is Ricochet's first singles loss, certainly, on the main roster. And it's just like, why would you throw away Ricochet's undefeated in singles action streak, I guess, just to sort of fuel this new heel who we don't really see that often anyway? Ah, man. And a heel who's just kind of stumbling out the wreckage that is the Raw Tag Division as well. I'm going to give this a C-. There were two big things majorly wrong for me. One, Ricochet lost pretty clean as well. I mean, Roode like slammed him into the ring post, but it wasn't anything. He didn't get a chair and hit him behind the referee's back or anything. It was a pretty clean victory over Ricochet, one of the most promising guys in the entire roster. Also, the crowd were totally dead for this, and it did affect the match as well, which was a decent bit of action, I guess. But when the crowd are dead, you're already fighting an uphill battle, and I think maybe their energy had been sapped by that Becky Lynch Alicia Fox match. Maybe they were just tired. Who knows? But yeah, C- is the grade. Why would you have Ricochet lose, guys? What's the big deal? Next up, a vignette on the big screen, and Bray Wyatt is now a children's TV presenter with the bright sweater and the hey kids and the colourful set. And this isn't where I saw the puppet thing going. I saw the puppets and I was like, oh, it's going to be some creepy puppet master, like controlling ventriloquism stuff. It's going to be really cool to see. Not literally he's got a puppet and he's on a TV show. What's going on? So Bray basically, goes, hey kids, I'm Bray Wyatt, your TV presenter. Here's some puppet friends of mine, and this is the old me. And there's like a cardboard cutout of the old Bray Wyatt, and he just saws it up with a chainsaw. And in the background, you got a laughing track of kids going like, yay! And it's just... So it gets the question mark grade, which I don't like to dish out too often because it feels like a cop-out, but I genuinely don't know whether this is going to be the best thing ever or the worst. I hope you agree, and let's just hang on until next week and not try and think about it too much until then, otherwise we'll just drive ourselves mad. And finally, the main event to decide Seth Rollins as #1 contender, AJ Styles versus Baron Corbin, and this is pretty much exactly how you'd expect it to be. Big babyface, big heel. It sort of explains why Corbin was the guy who won his qualifier match, because you need just a detestable guy that the fans just don't like at all for, you know, for the babyface to go over and look really heroic in doing so. It's storytelling 101, and it did work here. There was nothing particularly unique. The match wasn't even particularly special. The crowd was so tired by this point, but at the same time, it achieved the desired goal. And AJ won pretty clean, well, totally clean actually, nailing Corbin with a phenomenal forearm and picking up the victory. And then afterwards, Rollins came out, the pair shook hands, and that's a very, very exciting match for Money in the Bank. Hopefully it gets time, and hopefully they do it justice. The match itself, I'm going to give a B-. As I say, everyone seemed a little bit drained and a little bit tired by this point, but I have no complaints in terms of the winner. And finally, the big overall grade for Monday Night Raw from Des Moines, Iowa. I'm going to have to go straight down the middle again and give it a C grade. The main thread running through Raw, or the main storyline, or whatever you want to call it, I was a fan of. I liked the 2 triple threat matches leading into that main event, and even though it wasn't the most spectacular main event, we're getting Styles versus Rollins. What a dream match, you know? We can't really complain about that. But there were other things aside from that main thread running through Raw that really did just suck. Like, it's no bones about it. Like Becky Lynch versus Alicia Fox, one of the women's tag champs just losing in seconds, Ricochet losing in disappointing fashion. You know, it was a wildly inconsistent show, which all balanced out in the end to an average C grade. Thanks very much for watching, and let us know what you think in the comments section down below. You can follow Cultaholic on Twitter at Cultaholic and on Facebook at facebook.com/Cultaholic. If you enjoy what we do, then please do check out our Patreon, patreon.com/Cultaholic, where you can pledge. And don't forget, of course, most importantly of all, to hit subscribe and to join us.